Good evening. Evening appointed hour. We will now call to order the May 2019 meeting of the New Bern Historic Preservation Commission. Thank you all for attending. Morgan, would you like to call the roll?
Absolutely. David Griffith.
Here.
Ellen Sheridan. Here. Ruth Cox. Here. James Woods.
Here.
George Brake.
Here.
Jim Bispy.
Here.
Joe Klotz.
Here.
Christian Evans. Peggy Brockway. Here. All right, we have quorum.
All right, thank you. We do not have any meeting minutes to review this evening, so we'll just go right into the introduction to the start of our hearings. The Historic Preservation Commission is a public commission appointed by the City of New Bern's Board of Aldermen. It's responsible for preserving and safeguarding New Bern's locally designated historic districts, both downtown and Riverside. And it's based on the U.S. Department of Interior standards, state statutes, city ordinances, and New Bern's historic guidelines. Two of the major tasks of the HPC include approving applications for a certificate of appropriateness, or what we call a COA, and preventing demolition of historic structures due to neglect. The HPC holds a quasi-judicial hearing on an application for a certificate of appropriateness. The Commission hears sworn testimony and evidence provided by the applicant, by parties who received notice of the hearing, and by others who can justify that they have relevant evidence and are directly affected by the application. The Commission cannot consider comments based on personal likes or dislikes, hearsay, or personal opinion that cannot be directly related to specific historic guidelines. Likewise, commissioners shall refrain from stating personal opinions, personal likes or dislikes, or hearsay during the hearing. Commission's decision on an application is based solely on testimony and evidence presented at a hearing that directly relates to the historic guidelines. Morgan, would you like to swear in anyone who will present tonight?
Absolutely. If you are going to be speaking or presenting this evening, please, everybody, just move forward. It is all at one minute. All right, everyone. Is that everyone? All right. Hands up, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this evening is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Have a seat, please.
All right, very well. I'm just going to go ahead and give a summary of what the hearing process will be for applications this evening. This is how we generally conduct a hearing. The HPC administrator will provide an overview of the application. The applicant or representative of the applicant presents their application. Proponents and opponents who receive notice of the hearing may present evidence. Rebuttal is allowed by the applicant and by proponents and opponents who receive notice. Others who can justify that they have relevant information will be directly affected, may present evidence. The HPC administrator will present the staff's findings and recommendations regarding the application. The applicant or representative will then have an opportunity to make any final comments on their application. Commissioners will then discuss the evidence, may ask for clarification from the applicant or presenters. Eventually, the chairman will call for a motion to approve or deny the application with stated findings of fact. The motion is discussed by the commission. The chairman will call for a vote on the motion by the commission. A COA can be approved with conditions, or denied. All right, are we ready for our first application?
We are. Mr. Chairman, staff would like to request one final continuance for 219 East Front Street. You'll remember that's the elevation of a contributing structure. We're waiting for a response from SHPO. I expect it any day now. They just didn't have it ready for this meeting. One final continuation for that, and one more final continuation for 925 Pollock Street. You'll remember that was last month. The applicant had to leave early. She was on the schedule. She had to leave early, and she couldn't make it this month, but she is coming in June.
All right. Would anyone care to make a motion to continue each of those two applications?
So second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right. That takes us over to 424 Craven Street. They are requesting to install a new standing seam metal roof. This is going to be the primary, secondary, and tertiary areas of visual concern. They are here this evening. I'm going to go ahead and pull up their application for you all, put it on the overhead, and let them just take it from here. Okay?
Very well.
All right. Would you like to use the overhead? Or would you like for me to use
Overhead, I'll say the overhead.
overhead? Okay.
We'll put the application up.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and you can zoom in. Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gus Willis. I'm an assistant district attorney here in Carteret, Craven, and Pamlico counties. This is my wife, Julianne. She's an employee of Carolina East Health System. We've recently moved back to the area about a year ago. I've grown up in New Bern my entire life, left for about 10 years to attend school and practice law as a prosecutor up in Raleigh. My wife attended Meredith College, and I think it's always been well known that we were going to come back to New Bern the first chance that we got. Unfortunately for us, the first chance that we got happened to be about the month before the storm. And we've kind of been dealing with the after effects of that, as have a lot of people in the community. We're here today about the replacement of a standing seam metal roof at our residence at 424 Craven Street. I understand my wife was present at a design review meeting. I believe it was May the 1st or May the 2nd, and some concerns were raised about the necessity of replacing that roof. I think she presented some documentation from Mr. Bingle of R.E. Bingle Sheet Metal and Roofing at the request of the chairman of this body that indicated at that time that the lifespan of the roof was nearing its end, that and this was done again prior to our contemplation when we purchased the house. It was not our intention to replace the roof. Trust me, if we had any option in the matter, we probably wouldn't. We were told by our insurance company, well, we were told initially by our home inspector, you need to have somebody look at the roof. We called Steve. I've known Steve a long time. Steve came and looked at the roof. He said, I'm familiar with the roof. I've been up there before. I don't even need to go up there on it. I can tell you that what I recall about that roof is that it's had some patchwork done, some of it not in the best or most workmanlike manner, and that when you're making your offer on this house, you need to contemplate the cost of a replacement roof in the very near future of whenever you take possession of the house. With that in mind, that was contemplated with our offer. We ultimately ended up purchasing the house. In the course of that was the hurricane and, of course, the flood, and we were required to take out a construction loan in order to do some remediation of the flood work. We decided at that point that, well, I say we decided, I mean, when we went to close on the house and the insurance company told us, what are you going to do about that roof? We decided that in light of Mr. Bingle's comments from August, that it was going to need to be done in a pretty soon, pretty shortly, that we would just go ahead and roll that into the construction loan that we took out. So that loan was made in contemplation that the roof would have to be replaced. Again, I know that documentation was presented to the body a few weeks ago. What we have subsequent to that is from the insurance company, where they have performed an inspection on May 8th and have reiterated again that the lifespan of the roof is 0 to 5 years, and that they will not issue an insurance policy unless the roof is replaced. So we really don't have much of a choice in the matter. To the extent that this board is concerned with the necessity of replacing the roof, that's the necessity of replacing the roof. It's not my opinion. I mean, it is my opinion that it needs to be replaced, but that opinion is based on the opinion of everybody who's ever looked at the roof. We have today pictures that the body I know has already seen. Happy to go over those again. We have additional pictures that the insurance company took when they performed their inspection on May the 8th. And we have the letter in which they indicate that our policy is going to be canceled as of Monday, or maybe Sunday, May the 19th, in part because the condition of the roof and that it needs to be replaced. Unless the board needs to see anything further from that application, I'll include that on the overhead.
Bad data. Because all we asked was one letter.
Right.
Right, we don't, sir, all we asked was in your package that you include the letter from Mr. Bingham. That's all we had asked for. We didn't ask for anything else.
Okay, my understanding was that letter was provided at that.
You know, it was on the email. We just asked that the hard copy be provided with the packet so we could cover ourselves and you, just in case somebody else came before us and said, well, you allow X, Y, Z to do. That's the only thing we require at design review. No, this just needs to be in your COA packet, sir.
It's Morgan has to.
Well, and as new information, we probably ought to go ahead and vote to include this
Right.
as evidence in
Okay.
the application.
Yeah, that's all. That's the only thing that we had required at that meeting.
Would
We
anyone
didn't
li-
get the report till today, actually, from the insurance company.
would anyone care to make a motion to include the insurance letter as evidence in the application?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
As to the roof that's being replaced, all we're asking is to put the same roof that's there back. We don't want any alterations, no changes. We want the same standing seam metal roof in the same manner that it was constructed previously to be put back exactly like it was, possibly minus some skylights that are not historical anyway. They're in the 80s and probably contribute to some of the problems that we're having now.
All right, very well. I think we're familiar with the application. Is there anything else specifically you'd like to make us aware of or present?
So, nothing from us.
Okay. Before we move forward, commissioners, are there any conflict of interest issues with this application? Any issues with application completeness? Okay, very well. Is there anyone who has received notice about this application that would like to speak either for or against it? Okay, very well. Morgan, would you like to provide staff findings and recommendations?
Absolutely. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: the proposed project is located within the primary, secondary, and tertiary areas of visual concern. The current roof is approximately 100 years old. The current roof has been assessed by a professional who recommends replacement over repair, and the proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the commission approve the application for major exterior alterations at this time, citing the aforementioned guidelines.
Very well, thank you. And as mentioned, we did see this application in design review. We talked about the guidelines requirements for keeping historic material when possible. We talked about the standard of essentially proving that the material is too deteriorated to repair. And evidence was brought from the email from Mr. Bengal. It was also testified to from Mr. John Peterson, who accompanied you at design review. And I believe most of us were likely satisfied with what we saw there, and we only have more evidence now with the insurance company's letter. So, commissioners, any further discussion or questions for the applicant? If not, would anyone care to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we find the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 424 Craven Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, section 15411 to 15429, and New Bern's historical district guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact: Rules 451, 453, 454. Findings of fact: the proposed project is located within the primary, secondary, and tertiary ABCs. The current roof is approximately 100 plus years old. Number 3, the current roof has been assessed by a professional who recommended replacement over repair. And 4, the proposed project is not in congruence with the guidelines.
We have a
Second.
motion, and we have a second. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Would anyone care to make a motion to issue the COA?
So moved.
Second.
We have that motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Your COA is granted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on next to 207 Broad Street. Mr. Sheldon Miller's here. This is a request to include the replacement of concrete front steps with masonry installed and the landing as well with masonry in the primary ABC, the replacement and modification of side entrance steps, and the enlargement of a roofing overhang in the portico area in the secondary ABC. And I'm going to pull that up.
While
Okay.
we're doing that, Mr. Chairman, I need to be recused. Got a notice?
Very well. Would anyone care to make a motion to recuse Commissioner Klotz based on proximity?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very well.
All right. I'll scroll along while you're
Oh, yeah, sure. Hi, I'm John Miller, 207 Broad Street. My wife Mickey and I live there. We've been here about almost 8 years. So I have four items that I put on here, right there, 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 1 is a ceiling fan without a light, low profile, and I've got another picture that'll show exactly where it'll be. Number 2 is the front apron and concrete steps. It's hard to see in that picture, but that apron was lifted up and broken by the storm. I used to have a big river birch right there where that part of the fence is, and it tore up broke up the concrete, the apron. Number 3 is the side steps leading up into the kitchen entry. Those are not built to code. They're really small. I'll show you better pictures later. And then number 4 is the little portico that sticks out over the door that currently does not provide any cover for rain. So just wanted to extend it just a little bit. So in this picture, you can see the ceiling fan. I just drew it in with a Sharpie. It would be more low profile. There's about a foot of clearance behind the fascia board there. So it would be centered over that window as shown. So here you can see the damage a little better. And I should have taken a picture from the other, looking back toward the sidewalk, but you can see there's brick underneath there on the edge, red brick, and what we wanted to do was return it to what it originally was. It looked like they'd just taken a skim coat of concrete, put it over the brick walkway, and it would more closely match all of our neighbors all up and down the street that all have brick. And we would keep the same style, wouldn't change it. That's just on Pollock Street right behind us, just to show similar brick and the steps going up onto the porch, same size, same kind of shape, and mine would be just like that. Again, here's the side steps. It's not even 2 feet deep at the top step, so when you're up there, to open the door, you got to go down 2 steps just to swing the door open. And so what I want to do is replace those and make them brick to match the front. I have a drawing, I think, here. Show the drawing. Well, that's my next door neighbor. Now the Peacock law firm shows how the steps turn. I want to do something kind of similar. I'll show you on the drawing, but they're right next door.
Let me zoom out a little.
Yeah, zoom out a little bit. Thanks. So the dotted line shows the existing steps. 2 foot by about 3 feet wide or so on the top. And what I want to do is have the steps go straight out and to the right. It exists that there's that 8-inch post. That's a post that supports the carport that's there. And where there's an existing rail, that would come off, and then I would put another rail at an angle on the steps, and then another rail along the back edge, because otherwise it would just drop straight off. So now that would increase the front stoop to a 4-foot section instead of a 2-foot section. And then this, excuse my lack of drawing technique here, but basically I just want to, you can see where I show the drip line. I want to extend that little portico out to no change in style or anything. The style would be the same standing seam metal that's already on the house, and just bring it out so the drip line covers the steps or protects the steps a little bit more. It can't stick out too far because otherwise it would go to the carport. And that's not really a good picture because it doesn't show that gap very well. But that's the intent, is to bring that out. And that's just to show, the style, the kind of brick that I would use on the steps right there.
That's it?
And that's it.
Well done.
All right,
Any
very
questions?
well. Before we move forward, Commissioners, any conflicts of interest or any issues with completeness of the application? All right, very well. Is there anyone here who has received notice that would like to speak either for or against the application? Okay, very well. Morgan, would you like to present the staff findings and recommendations, please?
Yes, staff submits the following historic district guidelines as appropriate to this application. Entrances 441, 442, 444, roofs 454. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: the proposed project is located in the primary and secondary ABCs. There is evidence that the steps and the concrete apron were previously masonry units. The proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the Commission approve the application for major exterior alterations at this time, citing the aforementioned guidelines.
All right, thank you. So just to summarize, we've got the front steps, which are concrete. Those will be remade in brick masonry, along with a walk extending to the sidewalk.
Correct.
And on the front porch, ceiling fan. And then the side porch, the existing single direction concrete steps will be made into brick masonry again, sloping down two different ways, two new railings, and the stoop overhead will be extended to cover the now full landing.
Correct. Or as much of the landing as we can. I mean, it's limited as to how far I can bring it out anyway, but it would provide much better coverage. Right now it doesn't really do anything. It's just cosmetic, really. It's not a functional portico.
Okay. All right. I don't think I missed anything in the application, or any further comments or questions or discussion?
Just one. John, does that roof come out to the window? Does it shows a window there?
Yeah, there is a window there, and it would not come out. It would come out almost to that window.
Okay.
Not quite. It wouldn't look right if it was right on the window.
Right.
But so it would just be just short of it, and above that, I don't know the technical terms for the pieces around the window, the frame, but that top, the portico would extend just above that line of the top of the window.
Okay.
That top piece.
All right. Without any further discussion, would anyone care to make a motion?
I would. I move that we find the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 207 Broad Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance sections 15-411 to 15-429 and New Bern's Historic District Guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Entrances 4.4.1, 4.4.2, and 4.4.4. Roofs 4.5.4. The reasons being the proposed project is located within the primary and secondary ABCs. There is evidence that the steps and concrete apron were previously masonry units. The proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion passes. Would someone care to make a motion to issue the COA?
So moved.
Second.
I have that motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very well. COA is issued.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right.
next one on the list was 211 King, but that's been continued, so now we're at 6.
All right, moving on to 611 Craven Street. This is Mr. Jim Stillwell. This is a request to include the installation of gutters and an accessory structure in the tertiary ABC. He's requesting to remove a 6-foot privacy fence, this is a wooden privacy fence, and replace with a 4-foot wooden picket fence. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this up for him. Well, he's already got his hard copy, so he is good to go.
I would like to have the photos of the house first.
I'm sorry, sir?
I'd like to have the photos of the house first.
Sure. And let me pull this up for you.
Mr. Chair, before we continue, we need a motion to bring Joe back.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone care to make that motion?
I move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you for keeping us on our toes, Commissioner. And we'll jump to the photos first, per Mr. Stillwell's request. And we will start with the first photo of the front facade of the house. And I'll let you take it from here.
Okay. I'm James Stillwell. I'm owner with my wife. We've just purchased the house here a couple months ago. The first picture is the front elevation, the entrance to the house, which is, I have been told, historically the interesting feature of the house. We need to have the next picture, please. It's the back patio and garden area. This is a very, very small garden area, about 35 by 45 foot. Very, very small, but very nice, well done by the previous owner. This is the entrance fence to the back patio area, which is a 5-foot wood, solid wood fence. It's in a deteriorating condition. We would like to replace that fence. It's a solid fence. We'd like to have something that's more visible, and we'll show that. And again, that's another photo of the patio, brick paving, and the landscaping. It's a very irregular site. We'll show it on the site plan. And one of the issues that we have, because of flooding, not necessarily from the Neuse River, but from storm water from up above our houses, the land slopes towards the house, and we have this gutters that are missing from the upper roofs that dumps water straight into the little access hatch to the basement. We want to put a 6-inch half-round white galvanized gutter. It'll be painted, but it's galvanized to catch that water and keep it from draining into the basement area. And this is a picture. It was requested at our last meeting. That's our next door neighbor. That shows a 6-inch half-round with 4-inch round downspouts would be constructed in the same manner.
You want to go to the elevations that you drew?
Yes, please.
We'll start with the site plan first. How's that? Zoom out a little bit.
This is an aerial shot or a site plan, if you want to call it, showing the house. The front is to the right. The patio has a regular shape, brick paving. You can see that the shape of the lot's rather strange. And all the other houses back up to it, and their outbuildings back up to those walls. In the middle there, you'll see the drawing. That's for a 4'8" by 6'8" garden shed. Very small. And I want it to be in character with the house. The materials would be exactly the same as the house. 4.5-inch lap siding, painted tan just like the house. All trim would be white. The roof is an 8/12 slope with shingles to match the existing shingles. And the only feature that is of interest to me anyway, that makes it maybe a little unique for a garden shed, you'll see on this elevation, these are drawings that illustrate the front entrance and the side. And we're trying to duplicate the entrance to the house, but in a certainly smaller scale approach to it. That door is only 2'8" to give you an example of scale. So it's a small 4'8" by 6'8" garden shed. It is stick built. It has concrete foundation and will meet hurricane design standards. The only other thing is the fence. We want to replace it with a picket fence that's 1 1/4 inch by 1 1/4 inch wood, painted white, spaced about 4 inches on center. And the purpose of that is to kind of open up the site a little bit so we're not sitting in a dungeon, if you will, so that we can see the street and the people can see us in the back. Plus, the existing fence is ugly. That's kind of blunt. So I'm requesting that we could get this approved and hopefully in the next several months begin the construction. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Commissioners, any conflicts of interest or issues with application completeness? Didn't think so. Is there anyone present who has received notice that would like to speak either for or against the application? Very well. Morgan, would you like to provide staff findings and recommendations, please?
Yes. Staff submits the following historic district guidelines as appropriate to this application. Accessory structures 261, 262, 263, fences and garden walls 251, 253. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: the proposed project is located within the tertiary area of visual concern. The proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the commission approve the application for major exterior alterations at this time, citing the aforementioned guidelines.
All right, thank you. So essentially 3 different things. We've got the fence replacement as illustrated. We've got the small garden shed in the back, and the half-round gutter and round downspout and one of the interior corners of the rear side. Any discussion or questions for the applicant? All right, hearing none, would anyone like to make a motion?
I move that we find the application for 611 Craven Street for certificate of appropriateness to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance sections 15-411 to 15-429 and New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Accessory structures 2.6.1, 2.6.2, 2.6.3, fence and gardens 2.5.1 to 2.5.3, statement of reason the proposed project is located within the tertiary ABC and the proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines.
Very well, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Would someone care to make a motion to issue the COA?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You have your COA. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Look forward to living here and working with you all. Thank you.
And compliments on an excellent application.
Thank you.
Very well done. All right, everyone, if we're ready to move on.
Eleven Craven?
Yes, that was continued at the request of the applicant. I just need a motion to approve that request for continuance, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so we have that motion to continue 211 King Street. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. We're going to move on to 210 King Street. This is the request to include the installation of a new wooden window. with interior and exterior muntins in the tertiary area of visual concern. And I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, who's representing the application tonight.
Very well.
I think so. Oh, yeah. This is it from here. Good evening. This application is to add a window in the rear portion of the house. This is at 210 King Street, and this is the rear of the house. They want to add one window right here that would match the existing. They've got a set of 3 windows, and the new window would go right here. So they want to take one window and put it back on this wall. You won't see it from the street. It would be a wood window painted, 3D grills inside and out with a shadow bar that we had talked to Gareth Evans about, which they can supply to match what's there. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any conflicts of interest or issues with application completeness? Very well. Is there anyone who has received notice on this application that would like to speak either for or against it? All right. Morgan, would you like to provide staff findings and recommendations, please?
Yes, 1 second, please, if you don't mind. Staff submits the following store district guidelines as appropriate to this application. Windows, doors, and openings. 432, 433. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: the proposed project is located in the tertiary area of visual concern. The proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the commission approve the application for major exterior alterations at this time, citing the aforementioned guidelines.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any discussion or questions? All right, hearing none, would anyone care to make a motion?
I will. I move that we find the application for certificate of appropriateness for 210 King Street not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance sections 15411 through 15429 and New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. It's applicable guidelines are windows, doors, and openings 4.3.2 and 4.3.3. Findings of fact. The proposed window does not in any way interfere with the architectural quality of the building. It's in a tertiary area of visual concern, and it's made of materials that are consistent with the house.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and we now have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, would anyone care to make a motion to issue the COA?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? COA passes.
Thank you.
Who seconded that motion, if you don't mind? Thank you. Okay. So that was 210 King. We're going to move on to 309 Pollock Street. This is another project that Sarah's representing. This is to include the reestablishment of window openings with custom-built wooden windows and custom-molded fiberglass trim to match the original headers in the primary area of visual concern, installation of wooden decking, and a metal staircase in the tertiary area of visual concern. And Sarah's already got it.
This is, you all know this building as the Branches Building downtown. Let me get to an image. There are several buildings in this grouping, and we're only going to be talking about this one building. I know Branches also has the building next door. But what the owner would like to do is open up the original windows that are bricked up. This building was built in 1865, right at the tail end of the Civil War, and in the 60s went through a renovation, and they bricked up the entire front and enclosed it and did some other things. And right here, you can see we climbed up in the attic up there, and the rough openings are still there, but the windows are not. And so what we're proposing to do is match as closely as we can. We have this image from Sandbeck. It looks to be a casement window with detailing on top. And, you know, since we have the size of the window, those windows will be custom manufactured wood stained windows at quite an expense, really, to get that back in and open up that front facade, along with structural work to make sure that front facade is all good. But you can, if you go and stand out there on a sunny day, you can kind of see the shadow outline of those windows and kind of see where they are. It's actually pretty exciting to be able to open that back up in downtown New Bern. And looking at the detailing, there are, oh, did we not get it in the application? There are several buildings downtown that have a fiberglass crown piece on it. And I know you all, Kayla went to the pre-application and spoke to you about that. 317 Middle Street has those on there, and that's something that we were hoping to use for this project. Being that we're not exactly sure what this is, but trying to replicate that as close as possible to have it not be too expensive. And then the other portion of this project is we're going to be creating kind of a building within a building. So right now there is only one open space. You walk inside, it's a 2-story atrium. We're going to be creating 2 more floors in there out of the existing space that is already there. And within that structure, we're required to have a secondary exit, and we're proposing to put that off the back of the building, kind of emptying out into the back area of Morgan's. There's already a metal staircase back in that area, and really make it an entryway for this project, so that folks could come, drive here, offload, go up the back stair, go inside, and access any of the units that would be there for rent. Also having an entry point at the front as well. But that, creating that, it's really a metal staircase and deck on the back. When you go back there, it's not, I don't know, it's not like you want to spend a lot of time back there. It's not the prettiest thing in the world. At the same time, you know, we're trying to give access and not have it be completely utilitarian, but, you know, be able to have a little bit of decking space if you wanted to go out there and just enjoy a nice evening. And so that was the intent of creating the stacked staircase with a cover on it, so that it would not get slippery. It would, you know, provide cover when you're bringing up a suitcase or whatnot. And really just looking at having that be a simple metal structure similar to what's there, but using a stained wood decking flooring material. And this is the space that is there now. This small little addition on the rear would be taken off, and that staircase made in that same area right there. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any conflicts of interest or issues with application completeness? All right. Is there anyone here who has received notice that would like to speak either for or against the application? Very well. Morgan, would you like to provide staff findings and recommendations, please?
Staff submits the following historic district guidelines as appropriate to this application. Additions 331, 332, 333. Windows and doors 431, 432, 433. Roofs 451, 453, 454. Life safety 471, 472. I'd like to also add contemporary materials 552 and 553, and demolition 641. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: the proposed project is located within the primary and tertiary areas of visual concern. The reestablishment of the windows and headers is appropriate, and evidence exists to support the request. We have established through previous applications that the structure that is to be demolished is a non-contributing structure. The proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the commission approve the application for major exterior alterations at this time, citing the aforementioned guidelines.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, we're all clear on what's going on?
Question. So if you look at the lower picture there on the left,
Yeah.
if I understand what you said, is that the tall building is the back of the building that you're talking about?
It kind of, there are several portions to that building, but yes, that is the back of branches right there, that wall. That's what
Right.
you're asking?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what.
There's also an upper portion that sits farther back, which is attic space, which we intend to create a whole other floor in, and has 12-foot ceilings. I mean, it's a huge space.
So where you have the corner right there, that's where you intend to put the staircase in that area right there?
Yes, right in that area
Okay.
there.
So in the picture that you show of the staircase, you show that there's windows in that building there. And so in here, you show all those windows, but in that picture that you say is what's there are no windows in there that I see.
That's true. Did we not have windows in that application? Written in there?
I haven't heard you talk about putting any
About the
windows in
back
there.
windows?
Not in the back, but you had windows in the front.
Yeah, the windows in the front you did, but I haven't heard you talk about windows in the back. I heard you talk about the staircase and going out and sitting on the deck, but I haven't heard any windows.
Yeah, the project information mentions this project includes the opening of the original window openings on the front facade with new custom wood to replicate existing.
That's front, but I'm talking about the back.
And add,
It's, to be honest with you, this project is in the schematic stage and in the pricing stage to see if it can actually go forward. So, yes, if we can bring that back at a later time, or if you want to talk about those window openings today, for us, they're not 100% defined. And I apologize, they're not worded in that application, although the intent is that they would be part of the application.
Are they there now?
No,
No.
there's nothing there
Nothing.
now. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be a problem to bring, to have those windows there. As you can see from the floor plans, they are for individual units, providing lighting into each of the proposed units.
Because it's not in the application at present, it would make sense to me to bring it back at a later date.
Yeah.
Request an
They
amendment.
are in the I don't
Is it-
know.
They're represented, but there's not a lot of detail on them, so
Is there a problem with us approving the COA with the windows, or do we need to see the detailing of the windows?
You can see the detail of it.
Even though it's in the tertiary area?
well, we need to see the detailing of the windows if we so decide that it's critical. Normally, that would be something that would be included with a cut sheet or something.
There are windows in the rear of the Middle Street building we saw last month, the Surf, Wind and Fire building, that it seems like would be very much like what Sarah's talking about here. Same kind of building, same kind of scales, same number of stories, that sort of thing. Same kind of opening into kind of the
Absolutely.
the load-in, load-out aspect of a retail area. And I could see these looking a lot like that.
I didn't question if that's what they'll wind up looking like. It's just that we haven't really seen them, and we don't know what they'll look like. There could be any one of a number of different windows that would be
The
approved.
intent is to match the existing building that is part of that property anyway.
I believe you.
And I totally understand. That's completely on me. Since we are taking it to a certain point to be able to get pricing on it, that window would be exactly what these windows are here, which are a metal window this is a concrete masonry structure. If it were something that you could look at as a condition for approval to come back with the detailing of that window, that would be much appreciated.
Sarah, is the window placement dependent on how your pricing turns out? Is that?
I mean, for us, placing windows in that wall for you all shouldn't be an issue. Our goal in placing them there is to maximize the amount of light per unit. And, this project is, what we are doing is allowed by the ordinance for the number and for the number of units in this location for this project. So, yes, in a way it is. We have to know that number of windows to be cut into a wall is something that the contractor can price out.
So it might not look like what you've actually got up there.
No, I think there's no reason it won't look anything like that. It should look exactly like that.
Now, did I understand you correctly saying that if we approve the COA with conditions that you will bring back the stated materials of the windows and how the windows will look to add it to the current COA?
Yes.
Did I hear you say?
Yes. I mean, for me, this project will come back. You will probably see it again anyway, just because the nature of how it's progressing with the owner and the pricing and figuring out what is actually going to be able to be constructed.
So when you say it's going to come back as a separate COA, or
No. I mean,
you're
just
going to try
as-
to attach it to this one?
I would assume so, yeah. I mean, it may not. I mean, there's, for us, this is the major portion of the project. Are you allowing us to open up those windows? And the other major portion of the project is, are you allowing us to have a rear metal stair with, a wood decking and windows on the rear?
Is there, in fact, in the final analysis, that whole top level is new, isn't it? The 4 windows on top of that?
We're not adding any new space. So it looks like it's flat up against there, but when you look at the section, that is actually back here.
Wow. Oh.
So you can see that that's a portion of the branches building, and then that's the back portion back here. So we're adding no new space. Everything is contained inside that space.
Oh, okay.
The same thing is intended, that windows be installed in those elevations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the structure is as it is today.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
in this elevation, this is actually set
It
way,
looks
way, way back.
deceiving
Yeah.
because it's set back, a good 30 feet from where it is.
And Sarah, how many windows would actually be across the front? We saw 2 in the thing. I just wondered.
There would be 10.
That's the drawing. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That looks different than what you showed the inside, to the configuration of the old non-existent windows. That looks different. Is there a reason for that?
I'm not sure I understand.
I
Inside
think
here?
I think when they showed the picture, they didn't show the whole wall. They just only showed
Just 2 of them?
Yeah, just 2 or 1 of them. What it would look like.
Okay.
Oh, you mean this?
Yes.
Yeah, that looks like a great big, maybe fits 2 windows.
It's a large opening, and it's about 3'6", opening. And so it is a quite large window. To me, this image is deceiving because it makes it look taller and skinnier than what's there. But that is the actual frame of where they took the window out.
Yeah.
And that's what we would go back with.
Yeah, and you just show them 2 in this picture, but there's really 5 of those.
Exactly. And there's actually quite a large concrete brick masonry pier thing that runs right here that I don't actually know what it is, but we're not touching it. And it runs all the way from the ground floor up to the 3rd floor, and it almost cuts into one of these windows. And so I can't actually take a picture of all 5 from the inside because of that wall. And some of them are behind wall on the 2nd floor inside of branches. These are the only ones we shimmied up a little scoot up to the attic, which is amazing and has really amazing trusses up there that looks like an old upside down boat. You can imagine 1865 them building that building. But so I understand the configuration of that opening to me is deceiving from the original image, but that's what is there and that's what we would be putting back.
It's so sunny today that you can actually see where the old windows were project from the facade just a hair, and you can see the ghost of all of them today.
Yeah.
Because it's so sunny.
So Morgan, is there a way for her to bring the window materials and what the windows are actually going to be and how many they're going to be attached to this proposal?
We can amend the COA at next month or at another time. We could do it that way. Another thing that I noted while you all were talking is you might want to also request the rear door detail as well. But that would be, my suggestion would be to do an amendment to the COA.
So if we do that, if she wanted to, could she go ahead and start work on what we would approve today?
On the front facade
Yes.
and the decking, if that is what is approved tonight, yes. And then we could bring the window and door detail back maybe next month, if that is what you all would like to see.
They'd be free to work on anything that wasn't specifically excluded by a condition.
Right.
This project has to go to the Board of Adjustment for a special use permit. Our objective is to go through that process, and once his pricing is solidified, we will continue to work on the project and refine it, do all the details, and we're happy to bring that back. This is, for us, this is an opportunity to see if this project is feasible, and that's our intent.
So what is it that you're asking us to do today if you're telling us you're going to bring this back to us?
I mean, it would be helpful for us if you are happy with what we've presented to approve it with the condition that we bring back details of the windows and doors.
On the rear side.
On the rear?
I have a question for Morgan.
Yes.
What if we approve the COA with the conditions that Sarah brings back to you the materials for the windows and the rear door for staff approval, and that would be the condition of the approval of the COA with everything covered that she's asking us?
That has been done before. That was not an issue. Rear doors, tertiary doors are also a minor work. So that is another option as well if you would like to consider that.
And the only reason I ask that, because I understand, Sarah, that you're going to bring it back to us, but I think if we give you pretty much what you're asking for on here, and when you go to the Board of Adjustments, if they see that we've kind of approved the project, I think it'll go a little bit smoother with the Board of Adjustments. That's just in my mind. I could be wrong, but... And
I mean, we don't typically do projects like this. We typically finish them and then bring them.
Absolutely.
But, in this is a specific case, and, we were hoping that you could, for us, it doesn't matter if we come back here, we're back here all the time, or to Morgan, it's more of, is the idea of this metal structure on the rear with windows in the rear, is that, you know, are you all going to consider that favorably?
Well, let me ask my fellow commissioners, if I made a motion to do what I just said, would we approve the COA as that?
I think
Okay. All right.
Any other questions? If not, would anyone care to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we find the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 309 Pollock Street, not in congruence with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, section 15.4.11 through 15.4.29, and New Bern's Historical District guidelines, based on the following specific guidelines and findings of facts. Additions 331 through 333. Windows and doors 431 through 433. Roofs 451, 453, 454. Life safety 471, 472. Contemporary materials 5.5, and demolition 6.4. With the findings of facts, the proposed project is located within the primary and tertiary ABCs. The reestablishment of windows and headers is appropriate, and the evidence exists to support the request. With an additional note that the windows and doors of the rear of the facility be approved by staff, be shown and approved by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is there any
Second.
further discussion on that motion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very well. Would anyone care to make a motion to issue the COA?
So moved.
Second.
We have that motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? COA is granted.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
It's really a wonderful project.
Yes.
It's
gonna be
very
great.
exciting to
Yeah, it's
reestablish
very
that
exciting.
facade.
It really is,
It'll really add to the street and add to the town, open
Yeah.
up like that.
absolutely.
So
We're
thank
happy
you
to
ever
see
doing
this
it.
happen. We're happy to see this happen.
Yeah. That's David Blythe at Branches.
Can you get to the last one?
Yeah,
Okay. If we're ready, are we ready to move on to the last one tonight?
Yep.
All right, so
Yep.
this is the last one. This is 218 Metcalf Street. This is a request to include the relocation of a contributing structure on the same parcel and the installation of and the construction of an addition in the tertiary area of visual concern. And this is Sarah's project, so I'm just going to turn it over to Sarah.
I know Kayla brought this one to pre-app, and we spent some time talking with the owner and looking at the roof that you all suggested that we make a change to, and I think it really turned out nicely. The project is to remove or move an existing small structure back over behind the little Gothic cottage that's back there. I talked to Alexis Cardelli, who is the contractor on this project, about actually moving it to make sure that it wouldn't fall apart and getting it back on a foundation. And every indication that he said, this is the little structure here, and it's just adorable that they could absolutely move it. It would take a little bit of work, but they could move it back in this area. I think there was a suggestion of tree removal permits, which we can put in place. These are all just laurels, which are large bushes. There's no significant tree there that I could see that needed removing, but we'll make sure that that's taken care of. Without that structure moved, it really doesn't give enough room to put in anything on the rear. And so what we're proposing is to move that structure back next to the Gothic cottage and just have a little patio area. Well, I mean, that would not now, but just it would create a little space back there for that. The project is then to remove this addition that was constructed and open up the back wall to create a larger kitchen and add a downstairs master suite so that they could, let's not go upstairs. And part of that is expanding the back wall of the house a little bit to accommodate a larger kitchen. They have a chimney that we're not going to remove, we're going to keep in place. And what we're proposing in the areas where we expand the wall to add in a flat board to show where that expansion occurred on both sides, so that you can see, we've only added 2 feet to that back wall, but we were hoping to keep the roof, part of it, in place and not rebuild it, but in order to get a gable on the rear elevation to kind of tie it back into the main house, which is how I understood the comments to be, to make that addition more similar to the main house and not just have the low slope roof. What we ended up doing is taking the new gable and taking it all the way back so that it meets the house and it doesn't interfere with the existing window that's up there. This low portion of roof, which is right here, can remain at the pitch of the existing roof back there. And it was a little tricky, but this kind of just made it easier. So this little portion of roof, it's at a 212, it's a really low slope. We can keep that. The whole roof's going to have to come off. It's just going to have to all be rebuilt. But to continue that gable back to, so it hits the existing portion of the house, and then have the low slope 212 shed off of that for the new portion of living space. And then what it does on the side, it creates a condition where the wall steps back. You can kind of see it right here. So we've got, on the roof plan, you can see the gable is centered here, the ridge runs all the way back, hits the house, but since we're keeping that existing wall in plane there, just adding a little bit to it, that roof kind of steps back and it creates a condition where you've got a little bit higher portion of roof right here, where the soffit doesn't go all the way across. Otherwise you have a 2-foot overhang. And to me, that's the only kind of funny thing on the addition. The chimney, actually doing the larger gable gives us a little bit more inside roof space to support that chimney, so hopefully that's not a problem, because we're taking it out below. And with the, Kayla didn't have the window, we didn't have the window in there before, and what we did was we took the proportions of one of the panes, one of the sashes for that window, which would be in a shower, and we thought that would be an appropriate dimension for that window. And then the windows on the other side would be to match the existing that are in the living room anyway. So that would be an all-wood window. There's no grills or buttons on it, but in the same size and shape, with the painted wood siding and the hand-turn metal roof. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any conflicts of interest or issues with completeness of the application? Very well. Is there anyone who has received notice that would like to speak either for or against the application? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward. Were you here earlier when everyone was sworn in?
No, we have no idea of this project at all.
Oh, yes, yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry, I misunderstood.
Can I leave your stuff and find out?
And please state your names and addresses for the record, please.
Yes, I'm Rose Williams. This is my husband Bruce Williams, and we live at 220 Metcalf Street. So we're right next door to the application. I have a number of things that I researched and looked into and that have quite a large number of concerns. And truthfully, I did a lot of homework, and I had really planned on, quoting chapter and verse and reading all of that to you, but I have problems with low light situations, so it's going to be really hard for me to see that. Nevertheless, it's been following behind Sarah. Here's some of the concerns that we have. The shed in question was built in 1940, so it's over 50 years old, and that should give it some degree of significance as a contributing structure. It also creates what is referred to as a cultural environment, historically how things are, the difference between public and private spaces. This is very visible from the street. If you're facing the house and you're on the Evans side of the house, so that would be the right-hand side of the house, you can see that very, very visibly from that location. The cottage back behind it is prefab. There's nothing original to that, but the shed is original. And it does have some stone foundation and retaining walls. There's no way any of that can be relocated or anything like that. The location where they want to put the shed, it would not be visible from the street or anywhere, and there are some issues about setbacks, because I believe, isn't there a 10-foot setback? 3 foot? I thought I had been told earlier that it was 10 foot. Nevertheless, you're not going to be able to see it from the street at all, and we feel like that does contribute to the character of the property. When we went over and measured the entire footprint of this addition and patio, it goes almost where the shed is. So that means there will have to be removal of brick walkways, existing raised flower beds, all of that's been pre-existing for a very long time. So that's also removal of architectural aspects. More importantly, the combination of the two with the addition and the removal of the shed has to do with impervious materials. The math that we did, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it, you can't cover more than 60%. No, that's 60% with structures. I'm talking about impervious materials, which is everything.
We're well under that.
It's 30% is what I was told. Anyway, according to Waste Management, when I spoke with them in stormwater departments and things like that, they said this project exceeds what they allow for stormwater runoff. And because we are so close to the Trent River and we're in the watershed area, that the size of the project, it's not just the shed, it's not just the addition, it's the combination of things, will create stormwater runoff problems. It will create air quality problems. I spoke with Seth Ward with Premier Forestry, they're licensed arborists and they do work for the city. And they looked at the mature pecan tree that's between the cottage and the shed. And the combination of the addition being put on will create a problem for the roots and kill that tree. And it is a mature tree. There's no way it will survive. And Peggy and I both have sat on the Appearance Commission and / tree board. I do currently, and that is accurate. But just so that you know that I did speak to someone professionally about that. So there's a lot of issues. Another issue is the change in the roof line on the addition. With this roof line, we would no longer be able to see the river, any of our neighbors' yards. That changes everything from not just view and sight, but it's obstruction of light and air. It affects our HVAC system. Same thing with the killing of the tree. You're talking about also removing a lot of vegetation, grass, shrubs, all of that. So there's some grave concerns about this. We spoke to a number of the people that had been issued letters. They all signed a paper saying that they hope that you will deny this application in its current form. I've also spoken with Bill McRae at Tryon Palace and the History Center. They were not notified of this project. They did not get a letter as of today. And he has deep concerns about this also, because other than just the packet that I showed him that was mine, they don't know anything about it. And they don't like the, I don't really want to speak for them, but let's just say that they have deep concerns, and they couldn't be here this evening because of the Supreme Court issues that they were dealing with. But they have deep concerns about it also. So there's a lot of different issues that are there, and some of them are in not just local ordinances, but in state and federal ordinances, which I looked up all of that. I'll do my best to try and quote all of it if you'd like, or provide you with copies of it, but it is in conflict on multiple levels, whether it's the roof line, the size of the addition, the moving of the shed, loss of architectural features, air quality. I also spoke with Rodman Williams. I think probably most of you know him. Heritage Historic Restorations. He did inform us that, yes, indeed, this project would affect our house other than just the reasons that we've talked about. It will affect our foundation. It will affect our plaster. It will affect our windows and doors. And again, other neighbors that could not be here, they all had concerns about this. So we would hope that you would deny it in this form. The neighbors that live there don't even live there. They bought this house a little over a year ago. They live in Alabama. They use it primarily as a vacation home, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. They've never said a word to us or any of the other neighbors. Nobody knew anything about it until all of a sudden we got a letter on Saturday about this application. So they were just here 2 weeks ago. Nothing was said. The downstairs of the house currently has a bedroom and a full bathroom, but it is not a master suite by any means whatsoever. Nevertheless, we would hope that you would deny this, like I said, in this current form. But we were just stunned by the mass and scale of it, and how, as we were told, this is going to change everything from your air quality to your soil quality. It's just massive to us. So while it may seem just like an addition, this takes up almost the entire space from the back of this house all the way to the cottage. And when that cottage was built in the late 1980s, we allowed them to bring trucks through our yard to reposition it, because it didn't even face that direction, and it was an old wooden barn. There's nothing left. It was taken apart piece by piece and replaced. It's a faux structure. Most people are surprised to find that out. They think that it's original. It's not. So this is a big deal. It will, like I said, it will affect us in so many ways. And this has been extremely stressful to find out about this in a short period of time. But I'll be glad to give you this if you'd like, that shows all the signatures, which is everything from Robinson Insurance, I'm sorry. Richard Parsons, who has also sat on your board before.
Richard Parsons called me and said it was fine.
When did he do that?
He signed
Well,
it.
wait. We'll have time for rebuttal.
Yeah, okay.
We're not going to do it like this.
No, that's fine. But that's why I said I'm more than happy to give it to you, but all the signatures that are there.
Before we move to the applicant's turn for rebuttal to any of this testimony, you mentioned things like you spoke to someone with stormwater management, or you said waste management.
I meant stormwater management, yes.
Okay, do you have a letter or anything that you'd like to enter into evidence?
No, only that we spoke to them. We really had so little time. If we had known about this ahead of time, we could have gone that route. But we did everything from speaking to our lawyer at Ward & Smith to speaking to Rodman Williams. We were trying to gather information on how this was going to affect us. And as a matter of fact, we made an appointment with Morgan on Monday afternoon because the online application was so small and we couldn't blow it up. We couldn't read the numbers. So we went to see her and got her to, I actually have it with me, run a copy, but we still actually needed to use a magnifying glass to see the numbers. Because when you look at it on paper, it doesn't look that big. But when you actually go and look in the physical space, you're like, oh my God. You know, we quite literally will not be able to see anything in that direction. And when our other neighbors found out about this, that was of deep concern to them too. Plus the loss of, Peggy knows we struggle with trees, but there's no way that this tree will survive, not with this construction. Now, I'll be happy to get Premier Forestry to give you a letter to that effect.
Well, we're considering the application and likely providing a ruling on it tonight, so.
I would at the very least then ask you to postpone it till the next meeting until some of this information can be provided and some of the other people like Bill McCrae can be present at a meeting.
Do you have anything further to add at this time?
I have merely the concern of how they're going to get in and out to do the construction. The space doesn't really allow them a big opening to go down there with any kind of equipment to do any kind of excavating. Is it all going to be like hand done, or how they plan on doing that? What they're going to move the shed on? There's no way to drive anything back there.
And we asked Morgan about this also, that how were they proposing to get equipment back in this area to work, and she said she didn't have any idea.
Well, that's not her responsibility, so.
Right, but it
that's
was
why that was answered that way.
Yes, but it was a verifiable question to ask, how's this going to happen? The houses are very, very close together.
All right. Before we go to rebuttal by the applicant, Morgan, there was one issue that I saw you raise your hand about with in reference to the Tryon Palace having not received notice, that claim. Do we know something more about that?
Yes, I've got 3 things to add that just for the board reference and staff comment. Technically, that is considered hearsay, stormwater and all that. So without sufficient evidence, it is technically considered hearsay without sufficient evidence. Secondly, it's unfortunate that Tryon Palace didn't receive notice, but the owner of record for parcel ID 8009128, aka Tryon Palace, is the state of North Carolina. So once it goes in the mail, it goes to 116 West Jones Street, Raleigh, which is unfortunate that Raleigh does not forward it to Tryon Palace, but I have to send it to the owner of record.
But technically, that notice was made.
Yes.
Thank you. That explains things. I got, after I spoke with Bill McCrae and he checked everything, he sent an email today saying, I still never got a letter. I'm concerned. I can provide you with the email, but other than that, then it is hearsay, what he said in the email that he sent to me. But they were concerned that they weren't notified, but that explains it.
And the last comment that I have is regarding the notification. State statute requires 7 days prior to the meeting, and they did go out within that 7-day period.
All right, thank you. Would the applicant like to provide rebuttal to any of the public comment made?
First of all, George and Jenny Howard, they are both professors at Alabama State University. Wonderful people. George told us that he is a North Carolina native and that he and his wife want to retire back here. So yes, they have purchased the house and are using it as a vacation house. But with the completion of this renovation, they intend to live here full time. They absolutely want to be nice to their neighbors. It is not a requirement that private property, views over private property, be preserved to facilitate someone's view. It's just not a requirement. You own private property and you can do things within the ordinance. As to the different government agencies that she referenced, stormwater management. If we look at the entire site, and the New Bern ordinance requires that not more than 50% of the rear yard be paved, or not more than 60% of the lot be covered. And the addition that we are doing is right here, right, it's this little L right in here. And so that is on the front, on G101, it shows the new space that we're adding, which is 487 square feet, a very small amount of space. Yes, there are existing, there is some brick patio in the rear that will have to be moved, but that there is nothing, I don't know, looking at it, there's nothing historic about that brick patio that we can see. There is a concrete foundation on the shed, that is true, and a new concrete foundation would be added in the new location. This tree right here, I have no idea how the roots would be impacted. We're not digging in under that line at all. It's already far enough away outside of our foundation that it would not be impacted under that drip line. Go back to here. So that tree being, I don't have it marked on this sheet here. Is it marked on here? I don't see it there. As to the placement of the shed, I mean, it's possible that we could move it right to the 3-foot line of the property line if a concern was that it be seen from the street. Right now, it sits right almost next to the property line. I don't think the owners would have a problem moving it closer to that property edge at all if it needed to be seen. The intent was to preserve the structure. It's cute and, you know, has some history to it. At the same time, it's not uncommon for us to move structures like this within the historic district. The placement of it constricts that yard and usable area. I had two people who got notices. I had Lorraine Hale and Richard Parsons both call me yesterday and speak in favor of it. I haven't seen a paper. No one else contacted me about any issues of the project at all. And as to air quality, I have no idea what that means. This is a one-story addition to an already one-story addition. I can't imagine how that impacts air quality in any way. But we're well within the coverage for an addition in that area.
All right, thank you.
Can I respond to some of those things?
Yes, our rules of procedure allow for that. Any notified proponents or opponents may respond to that rebuttal if you like.
Do you want me to come back up?
Please.
I'm going to address the tree issue first, again, because that was why I spoke with an arborist, not just from my personal experience with working with trees, but because of the way a tree root system works. The entire canopy of your tree, if you flip that, that is the exact same pattern of the root system. So however far your canopy is, that is how far your root system is under the tree. It's not about, I mean, while digging and that sort of thing will affect the roots of the tree and would kill it, it's because of all the things that are being placed on the roof system from this, from the addition that's being placed on the roots. And that's everything from equipment to the addition to everything it will indeed kill this tree.
Just to be clear, are you talking about the shed relocation affecting the tree or the addition?
The addition.
And the shed relocation.
Okay.
The shed relocation would have some impact to it, there's no doubt about that, but it's the addition that would actually impact the root system of the tree.
The tree we're talking about, is that visible in the lower center
I'm trying to get rid of
photograph right there?
If you're looking between the cottage and the shed, it's the mature pecan that's in the middle, so it's not the laurels that she was talking about alongside the fence line. This is a mature pecan tree.
That looks like it's really close to the cottage, is that true?
It's relatively close to the cottage, but again, because I don't know when these photos were taken, but the drip line to that tree will actually be underneath the addition. So that's my response to that it's not just equipment, it's not just shed, it's actually the placement of the addition is what would actually kill the tree. As far as air quality, the language that I used of obstruction of light and air, that is actually a legal term that is being used in North Carolina and throughout the United States. There have been lawsuits about that, and in the historic districts, specifically in Raleigh and other areas in North Carolina, so it is a legitimate thing. The loss of the tree, the difference in the roof, all those things, it's not just about obstruction of view, it's how it affects the air, loss of vegetation, whether it's grass, whether it's shrubs, whether it's trees, all of that affects the heating and cooling system of evaporation. And so anybody that has lived on our street in the last 10 years when the city took down the trees across the street, I don't know how many of us at that point, because you had dead western sun, we all had to add second heating and air units because the pre-existing units would no longer work as well. So that was one of the things that was brought up to me also by Rodman Williams, is that it's going to put more strain on HVAC systems because of the increase in air and the loss of trees and things like that. So those are legitimate things, and there have been lawsuits about that. So it's not just about blocking the view, it's also about other issues, environmental issues.
Sarah, if I might, you mentioned this earlier, but how much of an addition is this? How many linear feet are you adding?
We are, let me put this up. Do you need to get more comfortable?
I mean, because some of this is here now, you'll be removing a small part and adding some more.
So, yeah, so if you look at this,
I think when we did the measurement,
so this is the entire site right here. The existing structure sits right here. So we're adding this portion there, which if you go to the...
So it extends beyond the existing back wall now by 15, 20 feet?
It doesn't exist, it doesn't go beyond, we're about 2 feet from the shed. And so when you look at this, where that tree is, right there, that tree is beyond the shed, and then you look at where, so that's about where the tree is, right there. You know, if that's the canopy of the tree, I mean, it's not coming into contact with our addition at all.
Okay. And the other reason I asked this is just, if you would humor me for a second, you've asked for it to be disapproved in its current form. It's not a huge addition. What form would be appropriate for you?
well, I guess
Just to establish the ground rule of what you're really objecting to.
I don't know that I have a direct answer. When we actually measured the size of the addition, so this, I'm including like what's pre-existing, that would be torn off. So I looked at the whole footprint of what the addition would be. My numbers are just a tad bit different than Sarah's. The amount actually came out about a foot from the side of the shed wall. So that was one of the reasons why the shed would have to be relocated, is because the addition is coming that far out. And even though there's the little brick patio that's there, the entire footprint actually ends up being, I think, it was something like 25 and a half or 26 feet by roughly 24 feet. That's the actual size of everything that would be altered and changed. Just give me just a moment. Again, I don't know when the picture of this tree was taken, but currently right now in full leaf, the canopy does indeed come out where this addition is. Because, like I said, we actually measured and did things like that.
And you have a letter from an arborist?
I spoke with him, but I don't have any, I can have a letter by tomorrow with no problem.
The addition is 14 feet, 12 feet, 11 feet, and then it's 26 and a half total. So that is the back wall of the existing house, and it's got a little piece that runs out. Less than 500 square foot addition is quite small, and the other part of it is when you're looking about the height of it, you know, we had brought back the low slope roof initially, and you know, the height of that gable, I mean, I don't have the exact measurements, roughly 3 foot taller than what was existing there now, which is roughly the height of this roof. So, you know, 3 foot higher on that back portion to me is not a large distance. And the addition itself not being, you know, being an L-shaped, you know, preserving the idea of that back patio back there is very in keeping with the sentiment of what is there now.
And I guess I would note also that a two-story addition would be perfectly allowable, not only within our guidelines, but under city ordinances, which would be, you know, much larger. And the reason I asked you that question, ma'am, is that, you know, one of your objections is to reduction of your view, blocking light, blocking air.
Yes.
With a relatively small addition like this, I mean, if that's too big in relation to those criteria, that's why I asked you, what would you accept?
Have you been to the site?
I have seen it, yes.
Have you actually physically been on site?
I have not. I will not do that without owner permission. Excuse me?
Have any of the other board members actually visited the site and stood in it?
I did today.
Did you? Thank you. Because when I used to sit on this board, that was something that was heavily pushed, not just to look at a photo, but to actually visit the site, because how you perceive it, you know, angles from photos can be made to, you know, create all kinds of things. But if you're physically on site, you get a better sense of things. The same way that we took tape measures, and what I was really trying to convey was the entire footprint of what was, not just this is being added or that's being added, but here's the new footprint. And it's very, very large. There's very little yard left there. None whatsoever,
So-
hardly. Just a tiny little strip that's
Ma'am,
left
excuse
from
me.
the cottage.
You can't answer the question then?
Would you repeat the question, please?
Given the scale of the addition that we're evaluating, you're complaining about how large it is, about that it's blocking air movement, that it's going to block view, it's going to block light. You've asked that we disapprove it based on those factors as is. What would be acceptable to you as an addition, which is perfectly allowable for them to propose?
If they had, say, kept the same roof profile, we would still have an unimpeded view of the river. We'd still have access to a tidal breeze. So altering the roof line would probably be acceptable to us. If there was a smaller total footprint of the addition so that it did not impact the tree that there, again, seeing something like that, we could probably agree with that. And that you're also not covering so much of the space on the lot that there's hardly any green space, open space. Your guidelines do talk about open space and green space. There's very little of that left.
Our guidelines do talk about paving the back portion of a given property, and there's a percentage limit on that.
Right.
I'm sure this underwent review by planning inspections. They would have signed off on
Yes.
those aspects.
Yes.
I believe that question was asked during design review specifically, about the coverage.
Okay. Do either one have anything further to add before we move past all the rebuttal?
If she's saying that they did measurements, do you have those measurements with you?
No, we just used our own tape measures. We didn't know we were going to be required for anything like that. I would ask, do you want this as part of the file, that these people signed off on this?
No, it's not.
As far as people speaking either for or against something, they need to be here in order to do so.
Well, but that's why it says putting something in writing in the letter that we got, that if you couldn't be there to put something in writing, they did.
Well, I guess we can vote to consider that or not. Would anyone care to make a motion to do that?
My concern is, when you send out a notice, Morgan, and you say you give 7 days, is the 7 days from the time you send it and you assume they'll get it within that period of time? How is that determined? And I'm speaking from a personal note. I did not know a structure was being built in front of my front door until it was already there.
So today's the 15th. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So it doesn't include the day of the meeting. It includes the day that it goes out. But if you count it all up, it's a total of 8 calendar days. So I sent it out on the 8th. So 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 is technically 8 days.
From the time it's sent out.
Right, from the postmark. Yes, ma'am. I can't help what the Postal Service does. It's unfortunate that people didn't get theirs sooner, but we follow the general statutes just as anybody else.
We're not trying to insult anybody.
No, not at all. None whatsoever. But I know that, Peggy, I've been in your position before, that it's usually when it's postmarked, but that doesn't necessarily mean when somebody gets it. But nevertheless, the majority of these people said they hadn't even seen the letter. Fortunately, I had the packet I had gotten from Morgan and allowed them to look at that. And so that's why they made this statement. They couldn't be here. And because it said in the letter, if you could not be here, to put it in writing.
Okay.
But David, but if it was a letter that they had to receive, you're telling us that they didn't receive the letter. You typed up a letter that they signed.
Yes.
So in my mind, they didn't receive. According to them, they did not receive the letter from Morgan. Morgan said she sent the letter out to everybody affected. So we have to go off of what our administrator says.
Right.
I can't. Anything else is hearsay. It's just like if you send me a bill, a bill collector is going to tell me the same thing.
And some of the signatures may be from people who just did not qualify for notice.
Correct.
Which means they don't have standing.
All of these people were within the 100-foot range. Some people had gotten the letters but hadn't seen the packet. So when I got my packet from Morgan, I took my packet and my letter.
Once again, it's hearsay. It's hearsay.
She hadn't seen it, but they had the opportunity then to look at it while I was sitting there. And may I read this? It's just like a couple of sentences.
Sure, go ahead.
That it says, we feel the Howard project at 218 Metcalf Street negatively impacts our neighborhood and affects our property values. And they signed that.
All right. Well, as I said, if someone chooses to make a motion to vote to accept that as evidence, that can be done. It doesn't have to be done.
I would just comment that while the letter certainly expresses a sincere sentiment, it doesn't establish the nature of the concern, so there's nothing to be included.
Oh,
It just says,
I'm sorry, I forgot that part.
Other than its own existence, that we, it was given to us.
It actually does list that it says, number 1, obstruction of light and air. Number 2, loss of open space, green space, water view, and cultural environment. Number 3, loss of historic features such as walls, walkways, and garden features. Number 4, loss of mature trees and vegetation, which affects air quality, stormwater runoff, wildlife, and quality of soil. And number 5, alters the view shed.
Yes, but all of that's your opinion. See,
This-
but no, all of you wrote the letter and typed it up and had your neighbors sign it. Therefore, in my opinion, that is your opinion of that. That is not their opinion. If you present that letter to me and say, James, I want you to sign this based on this, I'm going to sign it because I know you. That's your opinion on that. We asked you, David asked you, did you have a letter from the arborist? You said no. He asked you, did you have a letter from sewer and water? You said no. So it's all hearsay. All we go on are facts. We go on black and white. If you had it in writing, as we're getting ready to decide this case, and it affected the case, then yes, we would include it in the record. But you do not have it.
Then I would request you table this till the next meeting, and I will provide you with that.
I don't see justification to do that. And I'm just one vote. I just don't see that.
There also seems to be an inconsistency in some of those people apparently replied to Sarah differently than as stated.
Admittedly, when Richard Parsons called me, he said, why are you demoing the little shed? And I said, we're not, we're moving it. And he said, oh, it was my understanding you were demoing the little shed. I said, no, that wasn't part of the project at all. So I don't know if you got misinformation or what, but.
Okay.
But when I talked to him yesterday, he hadn't seen any of the plans whatsoever, and I had the plans, so he spread them out and looked at them. So they're.
Any final thoughts that we haven't heard before?
These people are also here. They did not sign in, but they are here because they were not in agreement to this project.
Well, when it was
And they're
asked
both-
if
they're
anyone
both
wanted to
neighbors.
speak, they still may. That's up to them.
Okay, they just didn't get here in time for the swearing.
I just want to point out one more time that this, back to here, is the existing house. You know, we're proposing to take off that little portion, so that right there is the addition, which, in the scope of the yard between, the cottage and the rear yard and the expanse of the rest of the yard, to build an addition like that, I mean, there's no heavy equipment that will come back there. I mean, they can hand dig that foundation if needed. There will be no trucks that will have to get back there at all. I mean, this is for us, that's a very small addition.
Because the issue about equipment was raised in design review, I stood there and looked and thought, boom truck, you got it. You're going to move in, pull up in their driveway. Because I live at Queens Point and anything having to do with their HVAC involves one of those, that just did not strike me as a major consideration. I looked specifically because that had been raised in design review about, how do you get sheetrock back? How do you get this back? How do you get that back?
We handed
And actually, those are issues of means and methods, not character or anything that we concerned.
Well,
No, but I did look
Well,
because
but
of
also, in terms of our concern, and Morgan and I have had several conversations on this particular issue, not for this project, but for another one. The zoning board is the one that concerns themselves, if I'm not mistaken, with the impervious coverage of a piece of property, not us. It's not within our purview. So while it's a real issue, and it may be an issue with this, it's not within our purview. So that's something that we can't address. We address the design issues, we address those kinds of things. We can address the issue of the trees. I'm crazy about trees. But I would probably ask a couple of questions that we don't have answers to. And I don't see those questions at this point based on what I'm looking at in terms of the plan. The cottage is closer to the base of that tree than the addition is going to be. And that means that the cottage killed the tree.
That's right. That's how I look at it.
And that's not true. And then the other part is the Canes lived between 75 and 100 years. How old is that tree? Well, but again, if we were going to address the issue of the tree, then we have to have the facts about the tree. You know, I went through an issue around trees, and that was what was brought back to me, which I thought were reasonable and fair questions. You know, if a tree is nearing the end of its life, then the concern is less. Okay? If the tree is mature, which would mean midlife, somewhere between 35 and 50 years, that's a whole different story. I don't know. You know, and again, an arborist could answer that. And the reality, I think, is if the landscaping, now we're talking about the safe, health and safety of the tree, is an issue, then there's, even if we were to approve the application as presented, that could still be brought forward, that there's a concern, a legitimate concern. We have someone who advises the city about those kinds of issues, and you could ask that person whether this addition would endanger the life of that tree.
You also have an arborist on city staff.
There are arborists all over the state of North Carolina.
No, I mean, you actually have one on city staff now.
I know.
All right, with reference to the comment about other people who received notice who may want to speak, is that the case? Okay, please come forward. We need to get you on the mic. And if you haven't been sworn, Morgan will do that.
I don't quite I gotta swear you in, so right hand up, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give tonight will be true to the best of your knowledge? Yes. Thank you. Okay. And who am I stating your name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Dr. Angelique Andrews. I live at 222 Metcalf Street. I just moved there with my family. The concern was brought to me this afternoon about the deep concerns of the additions to the home that's to the far right of us. The only thing that I could say is that since moving there, I have really enjoyed the charm of the community and would hate to affect any of the aesthetic appeal of the community. And I would just further like to make a recommendation that condition to the approval of the COA would to get further research on from an arborist to see whether or not the impact of moving the shed would affect the tree prior to approval. So that would be my recommendation. I share her same concerns for the community, and that's all that I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Applicant, any final thoughts?
I have a concern. I don't think we can ignore the fact that we have learned this afternoon that this community, many people in this community, were not aware of this proposal. And in all fairness, I think we should table it, or whatever the term would be, because until they have a chance to understand what is going to come into their community and affect it, yay or nay, I don't think it's up to us, because an appointment was made. I haven't had time to go see it. I mean, we shouldn't say something if we haven't actually walked on the ground and seen it. It won't hurt anything if we delay this long enough to allow the community that is affected by this to have a say. Thank you.
Yep.
This project has gone through the process. That is the process. You would be singling it out as something extraordinary. Every single project has a requirement to go through that same process, and we have followed that to the letter. So unless there's some extraordinary reason you saying that people aren't aware of it, it goes through, every project that comes before you goes through the same process, and it would be very unfair to single this out as not having followed those rules, which it has.
And I'm not trying to single it out, Sarah.
But you are.
No, I'm not. And by that I mean, if they did not get the piece of paper, then the process was not complete. there was an interruption in the process. And if we have no guarantee that if we know there are people that did not get this, then the process was not followed through. You sent out the paper, if you're accused of murder and you didn't do it, but still you're accused of murder, you're still hung. But if they didn't get the piece of paper that tells them that this is going to happen, the process was incomplete. And
I think Morgan could address the process and whether it's complete. What she has said is that those letters went out, which is the process. And so they go through the mail system and they go to the address that is listed with the city. And that is the process that everyone follows. And that's all I have to say.
Doesn't mean it's correct.
I have something to say about that, which is based on her testimony. Every one of those neighbors got the letter. They just didn't open the mail and didn't, go to the city's website and look at the project. That is my understanding of what she just said, is that they just didn't look, they didn't get the packet, that they didn't open the letter and then expend a little energy doing 10 more minutes of research.
Can I respond to that? I would think at the very least with Tryon Palace being involved, they are the neighbors right across the street. And while the letter may have gone to Raleigh, Bill McCrae that runs the History Center and Tryon Palace, responded to me that he didn't have anything. I would think at the very least you would want to give Tryon Palace an opportunity to respond to this.
They had an opportunity just like everybody else. It went to the address on record.
If this comes down to following the statute, it was done.
And I agree. And I will certainly pass that information on to him, but I would think with everything that Tryon Palace does, you would at least want them to be fully informed before you voted. So that's all.
I have a question for Sarah from Design Review. Okay, Sarah, at Design Review, one of the biggest problems we had was the movement of the shed. And that was supposed to be explained to us this evening, how that was going to be done.
So I asked Alexis Cardelli to come tonight, and it was impossible. So I spoke to him on the phone, and he said that going out to that site, that what they would do is that they would go inside the shed and reinforce it, because it's not a very well-constructed shed and is quite flimsy. So they would go inside, reinforce it, just cross-brace it essentially, and be able to put it on essentially like
some kind of roller system or something.
And basically roll it back there. It's not far from where it is. You can kind of see it on the site. The portion of the landscaping, it's actually a little bit higher back here, and to get it back in this location, I mean, it still has the same orientation. I think that if you all thought it was appropriate to leave it, I mean, we're required to put it at 3 foot, otherwise you need a variance. But, to put it in that same location, which from the street, you would still be able to see it. I mean, I think that would be, if that were something that you all wanted to do, I think that would be fine. But, looking at the shed and the construction and talking with Alexis, it was of his opinion that it was doable.
Right. Our biggest concern was we didn't want it demolished in the move when it was being moved.
Well, that was a concern, and he
Right.
said that they would go in and on the inside cross brace it before they moved it because of that.
Okay.
Let me just take a step back here procedurally. We don't even have staff recommendations and findings yet before we start to discuss it. So, are there any conflict of interest issues or issues with application completeness? No, sir. I'm sorry. We have heard.
Okay.
We have heard rebuttal upon rebuttal.
We just want to know if she's got letters and photos.
I think I've already spoken on this.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any conflict of interest issues or issues with application completeness? Okay, very good. Morgan, would you like to give staff findings and recommendations?
Yes.
Before we delve into that, staff just has a couple of comments for the knowledge of the board and for the knowledge of anybody else watching out there in TV land. Packets are uploaded on the website the Friday before. They can go to the City of New Bern website under the Development Services, click on it, the packets are there. And I do have the list of property owners adjacent to the front, but I digress. City staff submits the following stewardship guidelines. Additions, 331, 332, 333, foundations, 413, 414, windows and doors, 431, 432, 433, roofs, 451, 453, 454, decks and patios, 461, 462, statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: the proposed project is located within the secondary and tertiary areas of visual concern. The proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the commission approve the application for major exterior alterations at this time, citing the aforementioned guidelines with a few conditions: that the corner boards of the original structure are to remain in place, which I do believe was addressed in the application. And, excuse me, I had to get my thoughts together. Had a lot of discussion. The applicant will obtain the necessary tree removal permits, and the condition that we maintain all mature trees and not damage the tree or the root system in the process of the project.
Thank you very much. All right, commissioners, discussion, further questions for the applicant. We've heard a lot of testimony that we may consider. Anything further?
I believe that she addressed the concerns that we raised in design review fully, that the roof does now fit more nicely with the house, and which was one of the things that we all mentioned during this design review, and so that it all hangs together more fully to my eye. And how the shed was going to be relocated was raised because there was a concern about equipment getting back there. And it is, a little narrow gate and another little narrow gate, but that is possible. And I did look specifically about that today when I visited the site.
Any further discussion? Comments, questions?
So, Morgan, in what you said, when you were talking about trees, you were talking about the trees, the tree line beside the structure at the back of the property where the little shed was going to be moved down. Is that what you were talking about?
I'm mentioning all the trees, including the big one, the big mature pecan tree, and the smaller laurel trees to the side. The rule for the zoning is if it has a caliber of more than 3 inches, it's considered a tree, and then it has to get a tree removal permit.
And so your recommendations are is that an arborist go look at all of those trees? Is that your recommendation?
No, ma'am. I said, excuse me, gotta go back to my notes, that a tree removal permit should be obtained if necessary and maintain all mature trees on the parcel and not damage the tree or the root system of the mature tree. But that could be a condition that you all were to add. So you want to.
When you say not to damage the tree system, what are you referring to? You mean with equipment that they may take back there?
That in the root system. But there again, I am not an arborist.
So I'm wondering if we need to recommend that an arborist come and look at all of your recommendations.
I am not an arborist. The city does have one on staff now.
Well, do we feel, and that's one thing I was just about to mention, does anyone feel strongly enough about this or about notice issues or anything else that's been brought up that they feel it would be appropriate to put this off for the next meeting next month in order for more information to be gathered.
Someone would need to make a motion to that.
Correct.
Do you need a second?
I did not make that
The
motion.
motion hasn't been made.
Well, we can either do that, or like we did with the other one, is put a kind of condition on it that an arborist look at that, and if there's any difficulties with it, then we would get that information back and determine what we had to do at that point in time.
I think what Morgan stated in her conditions was, I thought that was what I understood that to be, that an arborist report be done.
Well, that's why I'm asking, but you say that that's not what you intended.
I did not use the term arborist. Now,
That's why I'm asking the question.
right, I did not use the term arborist. I just said that they need to maintain all of the mature trees on the property and not damage the tree or the root system in the process. Now, food for thought. If that were a condition, and let's imagine that the arborist were to say it would damage the mature trees, then would that result in a denial? I can't do that at a staff level. I can't deny anything. So then we have that problem that that's gonna be a hang on, it's gonna have to come back to you all.
Well, and I think that's what we're determining is the fundamental issue with that recommendation, that it simply be guaranteed not to damage the tree or the root system. Someone has to make that determination up front.
What?
Otherwise, it'll just either happen or it won't, and if it does happen, then what?
So either we've got to put this on hold, or either we've got to put some condition that says that you can't go forward until we have something from an arborist that meets your requirements.
I could take a letter, I could certainly take a letter from an arborist and put that in the file. And if
From the city's arborist.
Right, or
No, from the city's
the
arborist.
city's arborist, I could take that letter, I could put it in the file, and so long as there are not any concerns or issues from said arborist. we're
Right,
fine.
we could issue the COA with the condition that that be the case.
Yeah, we could do that, and I would put it in the file.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was raised earlier in discussion that this tree may very well be of the age that it's going to begin to fail in the relatively
Again,
near term,
I'm-
depending on how old it
I'm not
is.
sufficiently expert.
Right, but the arborist could also make that
Well,
determination.
yeah, yeah,
That,
that would
you
give
know,
us
if
some
it's a-
information as well.
Yeah, if it's a 90-year-old
obviously
pecan
mature
tree, then
That was a discussion that the zoning administrator, Brad, and I had today. He asked, well, how old is said tree? And I said, not sure, but he said they do have a lifespan. They don't live forever.
Right.
And is it nearing the end of its lifespan? We're not sure yet.
So we could get the arborist to determine, to look at the trees that you're referring to, not only the big one, but these other ones that you list, and also if they're going to move that shed down that alleyway. If you look at the bottom right hand where that little black box is. So if there's anything down that, as long as we got the arborist going, if there's anything down that alleyway where they're gonna move that shed that is gonna be impacted, then that would be of concern as well, and something we need to know about.
That
I
would
mean,
be,
those look more like shrubs. I can't tell from that if there are trees down there or not.
that would be an opinion from a licensed professional, so that would be considered expert testimony that could go into the file.
And the arborist could do that.
We got a city arborist now.
So we could put a condition that the city arborist has to go and look at everything, because you included that in what you recommended. So we could put a condition that the arborist would go determine, as you all talked about, determine the age of these trees and determine whether any of the root systems or the big tree, the laurel tree, any of those trees over there to the right-hand side that I'm pointing to up there, if they're gonna be damaged in what the project is proposing to do.
Whether that's the building of the addition, the moving of the shed,
Yes.
anything.
Yes, because the people who testified have said their view, although they're not experts, but their view is that adding that addition to the back is going to harm the root system of the big pecan tree? Pecan tree?
Yeah.
There's also another tree in the back where the shed is, that when you move the shed back there,
Yeah.
that could
Okay.
have some impact.
Yeah, well, they'll look at that. To determine whether when that's built back there, will indeed it harm that root system in some way. So you can get the arborist to do all of that. Okay.
So I don't see how we can make a recommendation until we hear from the arborist.
Yeah, we can. We can go ahead and put that as a condition that nothing that arborist is gonna say is gonna stop the project.
Unless it's
Why get
negative.
it?
What do you mean, why get
If
it?
nothing that he says is going to affect the
No,
project.
that's not what
Now,
I said.
what's
Unless
I
it's,
said if nothing he says will affect the project, then the project can move on. If he says putting that addition out the back is, as these witnesses want us to believe, that putting that addition out the back is going to affect the root system of that tree, then that will have to be brought back to us and we will have to reconsider.
Gotcha.
And they will have to reconsider what they're gonna do because they can't do it.
Okay.
Right? Am I being clear?
Gotcha.
absolutely.
Okay.
Well, and what would have to go along with that is some sort of idea of exactly what aspect is harming the tree, and again, what would be okay? How close could you get to the tree so that they've got something they know they need to design to?
Yes. Yeah. So the arborist would have to give us some information about that. You're gonna put this man to work. There you go. Okay,
That's if someone makes a motion, that it gets seconded, and someone makes that
Mr.
as a
Chair.
condition.
I move,
He's gonna do it. He's gonna do it. He's gonna do it.
oh man, I move we find the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 218 Metcalf Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance Sections 15-411 to 15-429 and New Bern's Historical District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Additions 3.3.1 through 3.3.3. Foundations 4.1.3, 4.1.4. Windows and doors 4.31, 4.32, 4.33. Roofs 4.51, 4.51, 4.53, 454. Decks and patios 461, 462. The proposed project is located within the secondary and tertiary ABCs. The proposed project is not incongruous with the guidelines. Also, that with the conditions that the corner boards of the original structures are to remain in place, and a report from the City of New Bern's arborist be included with the packet to determine whether or not there will be damage to the roots of the mature pecan tree. Also, a tree removal letter be included for the laurel bushes. Did I cover everything?
Very impressive.
Good
Thank
job.
I just need somebody to second it.
I second it. Second. I'll third it if we need to.
We have a motion and a second. The motion does include conditions, so please make sure we understand the conditions.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Noted. Motion does carry, so would someone care to make a motion to issue the COA?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very well. We're going to believe that brings us to the end of the applications for this evening. Any further business we require updates on?
Really quickly, we are going to be having a training session with our legal staff at our next design review, which is scheduled for June the 5th. We're bumping it up to 4:30, so I need a motion and a second approval to move design review up from the usual time of 5:30 to 4:30 for the purpose of having a training session first. Then we will jump into applications.
So moved.
Second.
We have that motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very well.
Hope you all have a happy Memorial Day.
All
I
right.
think the Howards are not having those neighbors over for cocktails when they
Well, I would like to move that we adjourn.
I'll do so. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.